All right, so we're going to begin by taking a look at subject pronouns and AR verbs in Spanish. And to begin, we'll take a look at a table here. Now, this table that we're looking at has the subject pronouns in Spanish. And we're going to look at a table that looks a lot like this quite a bit as we're trying to conjugate verbs and look at different pronouns. And we'll explain what this table does for us. First, it's broken down by row. And so in the first, we have 3 rows: first person, second person, third person. Now, you also see a second person formal down here. We'll explain why that's down here in just a little bit. It's also broken into columns. And in the first column, we have singular, and the second column, we have plural. Okay, so first person. First person, if you've ever been in a literature class, they probably talked about the different types of narrators: first person, second person, third person narrator, third person omniscient, things like that. Well, first person basically just means that we're talking about ourselves. So yo, if we're talking about ourselves, means I. Nosotros, being the plural form, when we're talking about ourselves, is we. Nosotros or nosotras. Second person is we're speaking directly to someone. So you in the singular sense, or you all in the plural sense. Then we get down to third person, él and ella. Third person means we're talking about someone. So él is he, ella is she. In the plural sense, we have ellos and ellas. They both mean they. Now, you might be wondering, why do we have 2 things that mean they, 2 things, nosotros, nosotras, that means we, vosotros, vosotras, that means you all? It's just, the one is the masculine form, the other's the feminine form. Nosotros means we, and that could include 1 guy, 2 guys, or it could be all guys. If you say nosotras, however, everyone in that group needs to be female. Vosotros, same thing. It can be 1 or 2 guys or more, but if you say vosotras, everyone, including, everyone in that group has to be female. And same thing with ellos and ellas. Now, we also have the second person formal down here. Second person, if you remember, means you. So usted means you, and we have the to form up here also meaning you. So what's the difference? Well, to is informal. This is what we use with friends, family members, close acquaintances. Usted is what we might use with a professor, with a police officer, with a doctor, or someone that's older than us, just as a sign of respect. Ustedes, same thing, is formal. Vosotros, if we go back to that, it's actually only used in Spain. We don't use it in Latin America. It's only used in Spain. So it is informal in Spain, something you might use with your friends or something. But the ustedes form is formal in Spain. Now in Latin America, since they don't use vosotros, they use ustedes for both formal and informal situations. All right, so let's go ahead and jump ahead. We're going to start talking about conjugations. How do we conjugate verbs, and what is a verb conjugation? You may not be very familiar with it if you're an English speaker, simply because we don't do a whole lot of conjugating. So let's take a look at the verb to speak in English. So the verb to speak, if I were, and I put the subject pronouns off to the side so you can see who I'm talking about. I speak. Okay, that's how we conjugate it in English. You speak. But when we get down to the third person singular, he or she, it becomes speaks. Okay, and in the plural sense, when we have we, you all, and they, it is all speak. So you see, we only have one verb that changes just a little bit. Everything else is speak. Not very original, but that's how it is. Let's take a look at another, let's go ahead and go to another verb that we have in English, to be. Now, to be does change a little bit. So for the first person singular, it's I am. Second person singular, you are. and then third person singular is he or she is. In the plural sense, it's all are. Okay, so we do see a little bit more variation here. In Spanish, every single one of these is going to be different. Every pronoun in the first person, second person, or the third person, we're going to have a different verb conjugation. It's going to change more than what we see here. So let's take a look at the verb hablar. Okay, also it means to speak. What we do now, this, as I mentioned earlier, we're looking at AR verbs. We're going to drop the AR. Whenever we're conjugating a verb in Spanish, we drop the AR. Now there's two other types of verbs. We have ER verbs and IR verbs. The ER, we do the same thing. We would drop that before we conjugate it. Well, with hablar, we drop the AR and we add these endings. So yo hablo means I speak. Okay, remember first person is, we're talking about ourselves. So I speak, yo hablo. Tú, you, tú hablas. Él or ella habla, he or she speaks. And this is why we put the usted down here. Even though it's second person formal, we put it down here because it is conjugated like the third person singular. Okay, so usted habla, you speak. This is, again, remember, this is what we would use in formal situations with doctors, professors, people older than us. Get into the plural form. We have nosotros or nosotras hablamos. Okay, remember, we're dropping the AR, adding this new ending. Vosotros habláis, and ellos, ellas, ustedes hablan. Okay, and that's how we conjugate a verb in Spanish. Let's go ahead. So we didn't actually visualize this and see this, but you heard it orally. Yo hablo, tú hablas, él, ella, usted habla. We're going to actually show you another verb. We'll look at the verb caminar and see what it looks like when we conjugate it. Okay, so caminar, again, drop the AR and add those endings that we just looked at. So yo camino, I walk. Tú caminas, you walk. Él, ella, camina, he or she walks. Usted camina, you walk. Okay. Now, if we look down here, we see some other things. So the yo form, let's look at yo camino can have three possible meanings. It can mean I walk, I am walking, or I do walk. It can be any of those three, depending on the context, what we're trying to say. The tú caminas, that would be you walk, you are walking, you do walk. And that goes on and on. Él camina, he walks, he is walking, he does walk. So how would that look if we were asking a question like, ¿tú caminas? Well, that would be, do you walk or are you walking? Okay, and that's how we conjugate verbs, regular verbs that are AR verbs in Spanish.